All right, good to go.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. We are going to call the meeting to order at 5:31 p.m. Roll call, Ben Wynn.
Here.
Andrew Franklin is here. Is there a motion to approve the agenda, item 1C?
So-
Taking care of it first.
That was a yes, Ben?
So moved, yeah.
Yeah, second by me, all in favor on a voice vote?
Aye.
Okay, motion carried. New business. 2A, math curriculum review process.
This is all Miss Westfall this evening, so she's got both agenda items.
Okay, great.
All right, I'm just going to share my screen. And let's see here. I can find my tab. There's lots of them. Okay, this was shared with the board in one of your board updates, but I just kind of wanted to go through where we're at currently in the math curriculum review process. We did have a lot of planning over the summer to prepare with directors to start this process. And in November 10th, we did have a meeting at Nicolay with all the partner districts around the math curriculum review process. We did some work around the new standards that came out. So really looking at those. We had the coaches and our math leads give some presentations around the shifts in the, my light is losing it right now, in the shifts that have transpired with the new standards. We also created a document with our current state, looking at any gaps that we had. So we did a gap analysis of our standards. And then we also did some readings around some math statements. Our last meeting was December 15th, where we did some work around reviewing and really taking some time to understand what the Wisconsin vision for math is. So we spent some time doing that. And then we also dug into the instructional practice guides for mathematics, which are broken down into grade level spans. So kindergarten through second grade, 3rd through 5th, 6th through 8th, and 9th through 12th. And those are put out by the Department of Public Instruction. So there was math experts from around the state who worked on those. And it provides us some really good information around what are some high leverage instructional practices to be utilizing with students in our classrooms. So our big activity for that night was really digging into that instructional practice guide. What we ended up doing was meeting in those grade level spans. And really, I'm just going to show you the document real quick of what we did so you can kind of get an idea. What this looked like. Oops. Oh. So what we ended up doing is really breaking out the instructional practice guide, and we looked at each individual instructional practice and really had a discussion in those grade level bands on talking about, is this something that we're currently utilizing in our practice, or is this something that we never use, inconsistently use, or maybe needs to learn more about. So all of these instructional practices were coded. So I coded all the handbooks. And then what we're able to do is based on the codes, we're able to see what are our areas that we might need to do some additional professional development on. What are some areas that we are really inconsistently using? And then what are we really doing well right now that we can kind of support each other in? So we didn't have a chance to finish all of this. So we are continuing to work on this. So we ran out of time, but what we want to do is look at this kind of vertically K through 12 to see what the different areas are. One thing in the groups that I dipped into, and then there was a lot of conversation around, was parent and family engagement, caregiver engagement, and ensuring that we're sharing resources with families, getting families into the buildings and making sure that families have a clear understanding of what the expectations are for math. So that was a big area that all the partner districts found that that would be something that we would want to leverage. So that was just from dipping in and hearing some of the conversations. But our next steps with this document will be to go through and really kind of analyze it and see where some of our gaps are. And then come up with a PD plan to help support learning. So back to our documents here. The next up in January, just in a couple of weeks, we have Aaron White from CISA. He's a math consultant. He's currently coaching the math teachers at Nicolet. He'll be coming in to do some vertical and horizontal alignment of the K-12 standards and helping us pick some priority standards. And then in February, we have a partner day in the morning where we work with the partner districts. And then in the afternoon, we're going to continue that work around that vertical and horizontal alignment. I'm really looking at some resources and then digging into that math. Math articulation. And then March 16th, we're going to be looking at common. 1 second. My son's coming home, so the dogs are barking. Sorry, my son was coming home. So on March 16th, we're going to be looking at common formative assessments and summative assessments around the partner district. So we're all in alignment with our assessments. And then we're looking at articulation for 6th through 12th grade on April 10th.
Jenica, can I ask a question? A quick question?
Yes.
So you talked about, obviously you guys ran out of time and finishing some of that gap analysis. And then when you look at that, is that going to be some of the work you do as a partner districts then is looking where we align and have similar gaps? That's awesome. Okay, thanks.
Yeah. And then also kind of pooling some of our professional learning too. So if we can get some professional learning around that.
Thank you.
All right. So are there any questions around some of the steps for math?
Yeah.
Well, go ahead.
Thanks. So those coded standards, that's from the Wisconsin state standards, not the Common Core standards.
The gap analysis was from the Wisconsin state standards, correct?
And those aren't necessarily the same thing.
No,
If I
they're
remember right.
they're very similar.
They're similar, but right. But I remember this Wisconsin state ones, there's a lot of them versus Common Core. It's pretty succinct.
Yes. Let me pull the document up again.
I remember doing some of that stuff before I left. It's just there's a lot of them.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
So that's why we want to do those priority standards.
Yeah. So and when you guys are looking at the math curriculum, because this is in the cycle, what problem are you trying to solve?
Well, we're trying to look at our gap analysis. I can go back to our original slide. What we're looking at is articulation, and we're also looking at our common formative assessments. We're trying to solve the problem of having an articulated curriculum from kindergarten through 12th grade.
But gap analysis between what, the schools? Or
well, we looked at the gaps that we've had in the curriculum at the different schools.
Okay. So like this school is here, another school is here, and then figuring out why.
Right. So we looked at that, and then we're also going to be utilizing when we look at the priority standards, we're also going to be looking at forward. So we pull in, the heat map from forward and look at what is being assessed on forward. Again, that we're going to be looking at standards and then determining what must they have at the end of that school year. with our priority standards, because there's like 40 standards, per grade level. So we're looking at having 10 to 12 priority standards per grade level. What are the must-haves?
Okay, so do you ever get the release? I can't remember. Do forward tests get released? I know ACT gets released every like 4 years, or some do.
Oh,
What do you
like
mean?
the actual test?
Yeah, does the actual test get released?
No, but they show us the standards, like each year I can pull a report on what standards are hit most
Right.
often, how many questions there are on those standards.
And then you can see how many people missed each
Yeah.
standard.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then with this, you're trying to see if a school hits certain standards more than others.
Well, that's part of it.
Yeah.
It's part of it, but we also want to see like, which ones are we missing, right? Where are the holes?
Right.
Like, what are we not teaching into that we need to be teaching into that may not necessarily, like, there is no perfect curriculum out there. So we want to make sure that we're hitting everything that we need to be hitting.
Okay.
And then what are the most important things that we need to be hitting? Because you're not going to necessarily spend all your time on every standard. You're never going to get pacing wise through all
Yeah.
of it.
No, I mean, I remember like with
Builds, what builds vertically,
yeah.
right?
Yeah, I mean, I remember because the forward is like, it always bugged me that ACT Aspire occurred. Yeah, I think, man, I can't even remember. Maybe it was March or April.
Yep, it's spring.
And maybe we waited until May or something like that, but I still had 4, 5, 6 weeks after that.
Mhm.
So what I did is, because I knew statistics was going to be tested, but I also knew that I had repeated chapters, sort of, and also in Algebra 1, it's a lot of repeat of 8th grade math. So I would bring in the stats unit earlier, so that way I hit it before.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And that seemed to help.
And you see that like in geometry is always at the end. It seems to be at the end of most curriculums, so that you do have to bump some of that and do a mini unit ahead of time.
I was
So
even thinking back to elementary, measurement was always last, so you had to pull some measurement in prior to, yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
So really
and-
kind of digging into that.
yeah, and then my only other concern is with illustrative is, efficiency, because like, I did inquiry learning every once in a while. Like I did a drone unit where kids flew drones, collected data, did a line of best fit. It took me 3 or 4 days. I could have taken 1 day to teach it, but since I did it as a project base, kind of like illustrative, it took more time. So I don't know, if that conversation could come up between curriculum directors, or if you brought that up at some point, that would be great.
And I was
That
gonna say,
happened at one of the meetings, because they're going to be talking about that articulation. So 6 through 12, we'll be talking about curriculum and curriculum choices.
Okay.
and I was gonna say your chart, Jenica, that you're having teachers walk through right now is kind of what you're talking about, Ben. Like, so what are standards I'm not even hitting? What are ones that I am? And
Oh
because
my
then
God.
you're gonna take a look at, oh, is it because I did this huge unit? And so then I missed, so that's some of the gap analysis for sure.
Sorry, I thought curriculum directors were filling that out. Okay.
No, that's your teams, right, Jenica? The teacher teams?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The only one I helped fill out this year was 6th and 7th, because they were
Mhm.
brand new teachers.
Right.
So that's why. But this is the document. This was linked in that board report too. So,
Yep, it's been in the last couple board reports for
Yeah.
you guys too.
so the teachers fill this out, like each grade level team, so you can kind of see where they're, the standards. K-5. So, and the questions that were asked, is the standard addressed, yes or no in the curriculum? Is the standard assessed, yes or no? If yes, how? So kind of digging into each individual standard for each grade level. K-8,
Yeah.
and see across the bottom. And then they analyze this with the coaches to determine like where our gaps were.
Okay. Thank you.
So I would just like to add, a couple of quick thoughts here. I mean, I think it's good to do this. I guess I'm curious if we have any specific goals here that we're already kind of eyeing in on, I'm just not sure I'm hearing that, but as always, I also want to stress, I mean, a couple of things that I've seen with math. I think I've seen a lot of inconsistent application of curriculum over the last couple of years. Lack of using resources and text, teacher lack of familiarity with some of those resources, online and textual resources.
All right, I love you.
And I think that, those are, pretty important things to make sure people are, synced up on using Alex as a resource and how it's supposed to be, graded or incorporated into grades was, another area there. So I think that there's a lot, for us to do, and not just in terms of, a gap analysis, but just looking and seeing, what we have and what we haven't been, maximizing on our own. So that's really just my 2 cents worth.
Thank you.
And Andy, I would say it's all connected, right? So you start out with where are the gaps and what we're teaching, and then what are the resources we're using, and what do we need to fill? So I
Yeah.
think it's all connected.
No, I know. And, this is a very timely thing, and I'm happy that we're doing this because I think that there are areas that we need to go. I mean, as I was not kind of happy with how things kind of went along. And I think that, again, the pandemic was part of that. But
Sure.
I think a number of factors caused some issues. And I just want to make sure that, as kids kind of, go forward in math, that those expectations are, a little bit more clear, that the resources are, kind of identified for them so that they, can succeed. So
Yeah.
enough said.
Absolutely.
And one of the benefits that we now have is a math coach
Yeah.
at the middle school and at the elementary school, which we
Yeah.
have not had in the past. And then the instructional practice guides, which is something new that DPI has put out, are really helpful to really look at that instruction. What does that look like and how are we going to support students moving forward? So that's
Okay.
really good to dig into for that professional development that you were mentioning.
Yeah, and I do think it is important. I know you brought this up, or actually you brought up that which standards were hit or not, but it also is good to know the proportion of the test. So like,
Mhm.
I don't remember the proportions off the top of my head right now, but something like on the ACT,
Right.
something like 20% of maybe I'm making this up, I can't remember. It's like 20% of the questions are 8th grade and under.
Yeah, that's what the heat map does, that DPI releases. It tells us exactly like, this is the hot button standard. You want to hit this one. This one, they're really not asking questions on, or, they kind of, that's what, yeah.
And it literally could be that the 7th graders are getting 6th grade questions wrong,
Mhm.
but I don't know the breakdown of the forward.
Yeah, they're pretty clear on that map. So we definitely utilize that. And we did that with ELA last year.
And that could be something as simple, like what I would do is for my warm-ups, the kids would walk into the room, grab a sheet of paper and start working right away. And sometimes I would, even in high school, I would give them 7th grade problems that were challenging or 8th grade problems that were challenging. So it's just like something that doesn't even have to take up much instructional time.
Yep, nice bell ringers. Okay.
Okay.
Any other
So-
questions around math? I took some notes on some of the thinking.
Oh, and I would give them actual ACT questions too, that were released. Months in advance.
Anything else or? All right. I don't know if Andy, do you have to say we're moving to the next thing or?
I'm about to. I'm just making sure that no one else has anything else.
Okay, I can't see.
Yeah. And then does anyone else? And I mean, I would just ask. I mean, I saw a couple other people here. No one else raising their hand for any questions. So I will move on to B, learning targets.
Okay. All right, so we've done some work as a district, as a leadership team, working with SAIL and really leaning on the book Coherence by Michael Fullen and Joanne Quinn. just kind of working through our district goals. In November, we had an opportunity to come up with our second 100-day plan. After wrapping up our first 100-day plan, which we wrapped up with that district spotlight that many of you had an opportunity to attend, really highlighting some of the work that has been happening in both buildings. And some of our highlight areas that we've been working on this school year to help meet our goals was really looking at standards and learning targets, collaborative planning, instructional frameworks, especially with the shift to that block scheduling in the middle school, and then modeling positive behavior. So those were some of our big heavy hitting high leverage strategies that we were utilizing. We determined in our next 100-day plan based off of some data that we collected by utilizing look-fors in the classrooms that we really wanted to focus in and do some deep learning around the learning targets. And we wanted to focus as part of the SAIL training that you go through. There is a 15-day challenge that they have you do in your second 100-day plan. We're planning on doing a 15-day challenge with our staff around learning targets, and then also doing some professional development around what is a good learning target look and sound like, and then how do we establish the why behind it, so all of our staff understands why are we doing this. We're doing PD on how do you do it, and then also really thinking about what does it look like in your classroom as an instructional high leverage practice. Because really, when you're looking at Hattie's work, teacher clarity is like a 0.75 for, improving student outcomes. So I'll just pull the timeline up real quick. Here it is. So tomorrow morning at 7:15, this should say Jenica and Kelly. She's joining me in this presentation. We're going to be doing a presentation for the Glen Hills staff around the why and the research around learning targets, and then how to utilize it as an instructional practice to improve student success. And then we're also going to review the look for data from Try One. And then we'll be doing a similar presentation in the afternoon and a day for the Parkway staff. Currently, our coaching staff is working on professional development for January 13th for both schools around creating high quality learning targets and then how to utilize those instructionally. And then we also will be sharing out on the 13th our 15-day challenge. And really it's a student focused interview. Administration will be going into classrooms and doing student interviews to see how those learning targets are going, like asking students, what are you learning today? How do you know you learned it? How do you know you're successful? So really focusing on those three questions. What is the learning intention? What's the relevance? And then what is the success criteria? So it's so important with Hattie's work on that. And then the 15-day challenge will be January 17th through February 7th. So that's when we'll be doing those interviews. And then on February 14th, we'll analyze the information that we've gleaned from those interviews. And then we'll be sharing that out with staff on February 16th. So that's kind of our big focus right now, is really doing a tight PD, quick turnaround with staff on learning targets. And then we'll be utilizing, you can see the resources here, a lot of Hattie, Fisher, and Fry work.
So, go ahead.
Oh. So you're
Just do it. Go.
okay. So you're basing this on John Hattie's teacher clarity effect size of 0.7.
Yep, 0.75.
Okay.
Well, and what we've seen in classrooms.
So at the beginning of the
Look
year,
for us.
yeah, one of our look fors to start the year, Ben, was just to have a learning target posted. And so after we did some walkthroughs for that first 100 days, we realized we need to dig a little deeper into what a good learning target is. because it's not just about having it posted, but making sure it's clear that the kids understand it, they know what their expectations are. So that's our next step.
So I guess I will say, so I did learning targets myself. I wasn't required to. I put them on my notes. I didn't put them on the board. So
Yeah, they could be there. Yeah, they could be in the slideshow or notes. Yeah.
I'm not like, I like that you guys are basing a goal off of Hattie's research. Now, of course, there is the issue of like, is a meta-analysis reliable in education setting? Because the question is, are you compounding bias in your sample? And there is some writing out there about that, but it's I personally, I think the meta-analysis gives you good information. So maybe I shouldn't even said anything about that. But with the teacher clarity aspect, so yeah, so clarity, like I can agree that it is good for kids to know what it is that they're learning. However, like, is there something like one of the most beneficial things I learned, teaching with people who taught the same subject as me was like, I would go to them and be like, hey, man, like, I'm not teaching factoring that well, and then they could teach me like, this is how I teach them how to factor. And this is the practice I give them. And that improved my clarity. I'm not convinced that, again, having to learn, I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but I'm not convinced that's going to have as big of an impact as like someone who, like, when I started at Cedarburg, I wasn't that good. But I got a lot better because I had teachers teaching the same subject as me who had been teaching for a long time. And they told me, this is how I teach it and it works. And that improved my clarity. So like, well, this is fine. And I, again, like, I will never, like, again, kids knowing what it is that they're learning is great. So that I'm not bashing this at all, but I do think that there could be maybe a secondary focus just like that, where, I know it's hard, and it was hard for me at Glen Hills because there was only one of me. I was the only one teaching 7th grade math. Fortunately, I had Rob there who had taught 7th grade math before. But I don't know, maybe that could be like a secondary thing on there where it's like, choose one thing you don't think you're struggling to get across to students, and then, talk with a colleague and see if, they've taught it better.
Yeah, and that's definitely a part of their teamwork and their team collaboration time and their team content meetings and grade level team meetings. This is just something as a district we're trying to hit hard, but of course, all that other stuff is so important.
Well, I know, but I'm just saying, like, I think so, since this is like a district thing, like, maybe putting something like that down. I'm not saying you have to do exactly what I'm saying, but I'm saying, like, if you put it down as a district, as part of this district goal or whatever, like, then it does get emphasized, much like something like this.
Sure. And the challenge is always prioritizing, right, Ben? Like, because you can't have 50 district goals, otherwise you do 50 things. So it's just,
well, if we
going in order. And I'll just tell you, one of the things that we really want to work towards is PLCs, and that's exactly what you're talking about, right? Like, that team collaboration. So we want to get there for sure, and lots of teachers are doing it. So it definitely will be part of, like, the priorities and focus moving forward.
Well, I'm just saying add like a second thing, not 50.
No, but we have 4, and now we're digging into one of them. So we just have to be really careful that we've got it all mapped out.
But if we had to prioritize one, I guess I would prioritize mine.
Well, of course you would, because it's yours.
Yeah. Well, also because I know it's impactful.
Yeah.
So anyway, it's just a thought.
It's important. I agree with you.
It's two things.
Yeah.
If, like, maybe it can fit in. I'm not asking for 50 things. I'm asking for one.
Yes, and there's a whole book on teacher clarity. But I agree with you, Ben. That's really important. I think for a quick turnaround with this 15-day challenge, like, this is a really good embedded practice. to get into place so that even teachers know exactly what they're teaching, students know what they're supposed to be learning, how to learn it. And then it also drives that assessment piece too, right? How do you know that success criteria? Like teachers know, like even having those conversations too, what does it look like to be successful in your essay? Like we're norming that, right? And having those conversations because when we're looking at this in all content areas, but there is that other layer of, yeah, how do you teach it, right? Going back to those instructional practices again. So maybe that's the next piece to this after we, you embed a habit and now we will layer on something else for the teachers. But that's something I can definitely bring back to the administrative team. Is that what you just talked about?
Thank you.
Okay. Is there anything else?
Nope.
All right.
Focus on those
Wonderful.
topics.
Thank you. All right, well, then looking on visitor participation, item 3A, visitor participation, any visitor may speak on any non-agenda item at this time. State law and or board policy may limit our response. Is there anyone? I have a hand that's raised that says iPhone.
I apologize.
No, that's fine. If you could just state your name and your address.
This is Anna Young, principal at
Oh.
Glen Hills Middle School. How are you?
Hi, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to all of you. I just wanted to piggyback on the importance of what Ben is speaking about in the work and just some of the strategic goals that we had in terms of the shift that we made in the schedule is that we no longer, with the exception of 8th grade, social studies and science, really have any singleton teachers and subject areas for the purpose of the collaboration that Ben was talking about. And I just wanted to add that there is weekly meetings that are happening between teachers who are teaching like subject areas so that they have that opportunity to talk about what they're doing in their teacher practice and how students are learning. And our coaches are also facilitating many of those discussions in ELA and math.
Okay.
Mhm.
Thanks, Anna.
Thank you very much. Okay, all right then. I'm going to close visitor participation. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. Thank you, everyone, for a good meeting.
Thanks, everybody.
Right,
See
let's
you.
go. Take care.
Yep, bye-bye.